Christian, welcome to the Engine Room.
Thank you for having me.
The podcast where we dive into the nitty-gritty details of what it actually takes to be successful in both marketing and sales in B2B SaaS. And you and me, we have history.
We do have history.
How is that?
We have history because we worked at FactBird together. When we started, it was Blackbird. Transitioned into FactBird as a brand, which is fantastic. I actually think that was a huge accomplishment. I know you were a big part of that. We worked together on that in particular. We were there when it was maybe just under 2 million ARR, and just starting to really ramp up as far as hiring out my role, which was head of sales, EMEA, and then also building out a full marketing team under Amelia, who you worked for. So, that's our history.
That was great history. And what about you now? What do you do now?
Yes, so I just left FactBird after 2.5 years to take on a global commercial director role at Performative, which is a fintech company here in Copenhagen. It's a wealth management software, so portfolio management system that helps out wealth managers, asset managers, just makes their lives easier. All the inefficiencies that they have in their daily routines are essentially fixed by a portfolio management system like Performative. So now I oversee both sales and marketing.
Right.
So the whole commercial function is under my purview, and have a really, really talented team there. So excited to get going with that.
Yes, and that sort of ties into the topic for today.
Yes.
Because at FactBird, head of sales, I was in marketing. Obviously, we had to work together as efficiently as possible. And the topic of today is obviously sales and marketing alignment, which can be a big struggle for a lot of B2B SaaS companies out there, not just if it's SaaS, also just in general B2B. And you have now transcended from just being in one camp to now overseeing both camps. And I think that's a very unique viewpoint.
Yeah.
So let's get right into it. Like right off the bat, what is it that you have noticed being the biggest thing going from head of sales to then global commercial director in terms of making the two camps work together?
Yeah, so I think I knew this as a head of sales, right? There can be very little light in between a head of sales and head of marketing. I think there needs to be a mutual respect about each other's function, and that goes for anybody on my team, anybody on the marketing team. We need to understand, the pains, challenges of our colleagues, especially because marketing feeds sales, sales feeds marketing. That should be the general ethos of any successful B2B SaaS company.
Yeah.
I think I'm more acutely aware now that overseeing all of it, that there needs to be even less light than I thought before, like especially if we're running something like an ABM campaign where marketing is put together like video content, bottom of the funnel ads, top of the funnel ads, and then that needs to be supported by sales, right? So it's incumbent upon the sales team to listen to that somebody is doing this for you, and now you need to back it up with outreach, either via cold calling, LinkedIn, could be personalized emails using 23 or Cloud App, whatever it is. But those things need to align, and there needs to be sometimes weekly, sometimes bi-monthly meetings where everybody gets aligned, because it's so easy to get separate from one another, and that goes for product development, it goes for engineering team, it goes for sales, marketing. So I'm a big believer in the fact that over communication matters, very much so. And again, going back to mutual respect for one another's roles, right? If you have, let's say you start at 2 million ARR, your goal at the end of the year is 5 million ARR, you have to have marketing to get there as a sales team, right? It does not work unless you have a high functioning marketing team, and vice versa, right? Marketing knows that unless sales is doing a good job to support them, we're not going to get there. So it sounds maybe a little cliche, but the whole teamwork collaboration thing can get lost so easily. And so I'm hyper aware of that as I enter the new role. Yeah.
So what would you say sort of the biggest shift has been for you personally? Obviously, you're being hyper aware, but is there anything specifically that you've taken with you from being a head of sales? And obviously, we were collaborating to now owning the responsibility of both areas. So like pinpointing, let's say, the red threads that you've taken with you.
Yeah, I think don't get too far over your skis in either element, right? So like in a startup phase, you can do 30 things, right? You can mark all of these down, create this great plan, but execution matters more than that. So I think pick 3 to 5 of the most important things that are going to be impactful towards revenue, and really stick on those, zero in on them, and get really good at those 3 to 5 things, instead of spreading yourself too thin, chasing butterflies, so to speak. And that goes both for marketing but also sales. So I think just aligning the teams on that level as well, because strategy is great, but execution is better.
So if we were to look at our history, one could argue that there were potential improvements to be made.
Sure.
So being mindful of that, let's talk about it in the sense of what didn't work, and perhaps what did work, and how that sort of translate into now. So basically painting a picture of what sales and marketing alignment looks like when it doesn't work.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think if I was starting with what worked, so we'll start there.
Okay. Positive.
Yeah, always on the positive.
Yes.
I think what worked actually was the general collaboration. By the end of my time at Factbird was really, really strong, especially on the content marketing side. So if you look at Factbird's site in particular, the amount of content that is driven by salespeople, where we're doing shoots around product demo. I was the OE Academy guy. And the thing is, the sales team was happy to do that, right? It was very collaborative in that sense, and we knew that building out content, meaningful content on the site that can then be, repurposed towards our end client, and hopefully again drive business back towards us. I think that was actually, I don't know if the right terminology is state of the art, but I think if you're looking within the manufacturing intelligence world, software world, I don't think anybody was beating us on content.
I agree.
In that regard. So, and I think sales had a key part in that, and marketing pushed us to engage, and then also guided us to make that content great. So, I would say that worked great. I would say what we, and this is hard across any B2B SaaS, is really cracking the code on, how do we drive more and more inbound leads, right? That's going to always be the refrain from a salesperson. And some of that needs to be backed up by strong ABM campaigns that sales is then backing up with their own, outreach. And I think we didn't quite crack the code there on that. I think it was getting better by the end, but it still wasn't driving enough meaningful inbound leads or awareness that led to, closed ones. So, and
if you were to sort of, I want to stay on the positive note before we dive into the opposite. But let's just get back quickly to why sales and marketing were able to collaborate like that. What would you reckon is the reason?
Yeah, I think starting from the top, so to speak, the leadership position. I mean, I think lead by example. I think Amelia, who's the head of marketing there, and I had very similar idea on how to hopefully build a sustainable commercial business. Mutual respect for one another. I think she knew how hard sales can be. I knew how hard marketing can be. So we had that sort of mutual respect for one another. So I think it started there, right? So we had a healthy relationship in that regard. And then I just think we had like young, eager people willing to also go outside their scope. So a salesperson like Matthew for the UKI market, he's fantastic on screen, right? And so it was another outlet for him to go and, jump into product demo videos. He did the video for Factbird Forward, the big event in December of last year. So I think it's just like eagerness, willingness, and also just, it was a very, there wasn't a lot of big egos on the team. Willing to work together. So we also got lucky, right? We hired the right people that were willing to work together. That doesn't always happen. And I'm also mindful of that as I build out the team at Performative, that culturally there needs to be that spirit of collaboration. Again, this gets talked about a lot, I think, across startups. It could be in the US, it could be here. It can sound like total BS, and I think every company would be like, our culture is so important. It's like, what does that mean exactly? And I think that shines through most in hiring. And I think especially on the commercial side, you need people who have that willingness and eagerness to work together.
Yeah, absolutely. So then talking about when it doesn't work. Obviously, any company might be capable of hitting their goals in terms of, let's say, inbound or revenue numbers, even if sales and marketing alignment isn't there. But let's take our historic example as the path in this conversation. So where it didn't work, and then drawing that conclusion as, could that be the reason why numbers, perhaps we weren't able to meet them, at least at 100%. Obviously, hitting numbers 100% is amazing, right? And most companies, I realized, what is it they say? We shoot for the stars or aim for the moon, or opposite, right? But in sort of, in your opinion, where it didn't work, and then what was the effect of that?
Yeah, I think there was so much testing and iterating and failing. Maybe we didn't fail fast enough in some cases. Like campaigns that didn't work, maybe we let them go on too long. Certain outreach from a sales perspective, there could have been sequences within HubSpot to the wrong persona for too long a period of time. So I think we have to be self-reflective on that and realize we could have moved faster on some of those things. But it's also a lot of, like, we didn't know what we didn't know, right? We were entering a market, ICP, persona, revenue band, trying to figure all of that out on the fly while still growing 70% plus per year in what I would consider a hyper-growth startup. Like, all those things considered, I think, we failed a lot, and sometimes that's just the case, and the patience needed for a startup to figure it out. And I would say by the time I left last month, we were pretty zeroed in on, we knew what ICP, what personas, how we were going to speak to each of those, right? So once you gain that knowledge, then you can feed it into the marketing engine. But until you figure that out, and again, there's always some element of move faster, learn quicker, gain the knowledge at a quicker rate than you're doing. So, and I think, again, being self-reflective could have been better about that. But I take some solace in the fact that, we tried a lot of things, and they didn't always work, but we learned, I would say,
every time,
a shitload from that.
Every time. One of the things we really try and practice here at SparkForce is, when a new client comes in, before we do any sort of performance work, any ads, any creatives, we zero in on the fundamentals. So going into the CRM, doing the revenue analytics, finding the right verticals, building the right ICP based on whatever data we do have available. And that will then basically be our building block for any sort of future go-to-market motions, right? And I think it's one of the things where sales and marketing alignment, if we're not zeroed in, as you said, obviously FactBird ended up becoming that. I think we were pretty well on the way when I was there too.
The building blocks were being put in place.
Exactly. But it is one of the main things that I at least see here at SparkForce, which is, it's just really difficult. And it's even more difficult. One thing is bridging sales and marketing, getting leadership in, getting product in, agreeing on, it's these people that we make the most money selling to. Deals are the shortest. And that's really, I think, from my point of view, the key issue to tackle in a lot of organizations is how to actually bridge that and make people become friends. Before we started filming, right? Ethan was like, do they have to be friends?
In my world, it would be great. Just because, I like it when it's kumbaya and people get along. But no, I think as long as there's a mutual respect, you don't have to be friends or necessarily friendly all the time. But if marketing is asking you to do something to back up an ABM campaign, my expectation as a commercial leader is that you back that up, because it should be meaningful towards you achieving your goal. And so there shouldn't be any question there. So in perfect world, I would hope that sales and marketing and those teams get along great and are friends. Reality is, it doesn't happen that often where it works perfectly between the two teams. But there should be absolutely no question that the respect factor is involved.
Absolutely. That sort of leads us into this next question, which is, in your opinion, what are the biggest mistakes that you have seen both personally, but also just when you hear from people in your network, the biggest mistakes that companies make when trying to get sales and marketing on the same page?
Yeah, I actually think because it's so relevant now, I think the buzz term ABM, right, account-based marketing.
Yeah.
I think right now that's the biggest mistake companies are making, because I hear this anecdotally and then very specific examples. And again, we have our examples from FactBird as well. Is that motion doesn't mean anything unless both sides of the fence are doing it and doing it well.
Yeah.
So I think in that regard, I had mentioned we're at Performative, we're starting to zero in on like a very like slim amount of ICP personas. We're going to get really, really granular on who we think we should target. Again, top of funnel ads, bottom of funnel ads that are really targeted to who we think are the right people.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic in theory. The mistake is if sales doesn't back that up and is not doing the right outreach to align with that campaign. Yeah. And I think it's so easy to be inconsistent there, that forcing organizations to be consistent week over week over week so that the campaign can actually run in full to the best of its ability. And again, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but at least sales and marketing were aligned there. So I think that's just one example of, it's about alignment. It's so easy to separate from one another. And on campaigns where you, again, narrow in on like an ICP like that, there's a limited amount of accounts. It's essential that one is backing up the other. Yeah. So, I mean, that's one example. So yeah, it's really around like activity campaigns that sales knows what marketing is doing, marketing knows what sales is doing, and that can be across any of the spectrum of things that are happening in the organization. But yeah, if there's not alignment and constant check-in, and I know this could probably get old to some like sales leaders or marketing leaders, but if there's not constant check-in, there's going to be a gap, and you're probably going to have campaigns that fail in the end. So
yeah, have you noticed how it's often marketing blaming sales for not wanting to collaborate? Why do you think that is?
I think it's a good mix, actually.
Yeah,
I think it's a good mix. I think yes. I've heard plenty of marketeers blame salespeople, and in some cases, I will just defend my sales team. To the ends of the earth. In some cases, but salespeople are unique in a lot of right. They're often chasing money and the deal, and however they get there. And if they feel like marketing is in the way, they're gonna be like, not worth my time. So I think in that case, marketing can have quibbles with sales, right? They're gonna be like, well, they're not backing up my campaign. I'm asking them to do something to support what we're trying to accomplish, and they're not doing it. So I think that marketing can rightfully get annoyed with sales if sales isn't focusing on the details that they want them to. Yeah. And I think, again, the general thing I hear across B2B SaaS from other sales leaders is like, they're not driving enough inbound leads for us. This whole, like unicorn marketing organization that drives inbounds like, 4 per hour to every rep. It's not going to happen. But you do hear that a lot from the sales floor, right? Yeah. I want more marketing inbounds. What are they doing? Yeah. I just want demos to come my way.
Exactly.
While they're not thinking about the full picture. So I think I do think it's split. I think marketing does blame sales and sales blame marketing, but I don't think one outweighs the other.
No, maybe not. Obviously, I'm also from a marketing background, right? So that does speak volumes. But what I often see, not just from my personal examples in my work life, but also just around and about, is that typically marketing will blame sales for not picking up on the leads, and sales will then blame marketing for not either it's leads that are not of good enough quality, or volume is simply too low. But in both cases, that issue is basically systemic in the sense that it comes from a lack of strategy up here, right? Like with the fundamentals. Because then marketing gets measured perhaps on volume rather than revenue, and sales are measured on revenue, right? So the bad leads then does not equal revenue, and along we go. So how do you see how do you see that being fixed beyond just saying we're going to measure our departments differently? Both work towards the same overarching goal, which is revenue. Do you see any sort of alternative?
That's a tough question.
I know.
don't necessarily see an alternative that's a fix-all. I think we got caught in that cycle early in 2024
Yeah.
at Factbird, where it was a volume play. Let's see what sticks. Like throw everything at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of low quality in those leads, and that also took time for sales to go and pilfer through them, say yes or no, were they right ICP persona. Oftentimes they weren't, right? So then it was a lot of, let's say, clerical work for a sales rep to go in, and that can be taxing, right? Or it can just be like, God, I'm wasting my time doing this. But I think then it has to come from the top too, like, so at a town hall, right? A CEO has to come in and say, like, here's our strategy from a marketing and sales perspective. The whole organization knows this. We're going to try a lot of things. They may or may not work. So I think actually starting from the top there and saying, this is our strategy for now. So we need to stay super close to this. And if it fails, it fails, but then we need to pivot away from it. I think, again, too often that doesn't come through at the top, and that can create issues across the floor as well. So
yeah, it's very, very difficult to change sitting in the so-called engine room, and where you maybe do not have communication to the bridge,
right.
to stay in the analogy.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think I tried sort of doing that a little bit. And I think for most people, whether they're in sales or in marketing, it just leads to a burnout, because ultimately you're not really going to change anything unless you change everything, and with everything, how you actually go to market and how you're measured. You touched a little bit on this. We both did, I think, in terms of frustrations with one camp and the other. So obviously now that you have the responsibility for both sales and marketing, this question is a little on the fence, but let's just talk about your general experience. So if you were to ask your sales team or sales teams in general, what frustrates them about marketing, what do you think they'd say?
I think it would maybe be that as salespeople, we have a rudimentary understanding sometimes of what marketing is meant to do.
Yeah.
So it is just not meant to drive inbound leads, right?
Yeah.
Demos direct to your calendar. And I do think salespeople fall into that trap, and then they just go, well, what the hell is marketing doing? My inbound, demos are not coming in. My calendar isn't full. When in actuality, you're also driving content, trade shows. There's so many things involved in the marketing cadence that, as a salesperson, I think the biggest complaint would be, yes, I don't have an understanding of that, so all I want is inbound leads. What are they doing? How are we spending our money? They're running this sort of awareness campaign on LinkedIn. What does that mean for me, right? So I think they can see that and start to get frustrated around that. And so that is where, like, communication of the plan and the strategy matters a lot, because you can say, like, our content strategy over time is going to drive more and more inbound leads, and it's super important for awareness that we have this out. So it won't just be dedicated to driving, in most cases, meaningless inbounds your way, right? Because we're being lazy about how we're targeting, and then you're going to get the wrong persona, wrong ICP. So I think that would be the biggest complaint from salespeople generally, and especially maybe a junior sales team, right? That it's their first true sales role out of CBS or wherever, and they have this idea in their head that marketing is just supposed to help guide them towards their revenue achievement.
Yeah.
So, and it's easy enough to explain away and bridge that gap, but in the reality, like, if you're in your quarter and you're 50% to goal and everything's frustrating in the moment, then of course marketing is an easy target at that point. Like, I'd be at 80%, 100%, 150% of my goal if marketing would just drive more inbound leads. Yeah. So,
do you think there's a bit of advice from your side? Obviously, more communication potentially out of marketing. To be able to explain in even more detail what it is that they're doing, right? And then on the flip side, sales maybe should educate themselves more on the matter of marketing, because there's obviously something about deal velocity, time to close, average contract sizes. All of these things do play a role on when an inbound may come in, because if we're selling to enterprise, a lot of stakeholders in that
Very much
buying
so.
committee, long buying journey.
Yeah.
We gotta take that into consideration.
Well, and
What's your take?
I think to that point too, like if you're going up market, mid market to enterprise, and I know for Factbird that motion was happening, I had started to implement MedPick as a methodology, right? And that actually should dovetail nicely into marketing campaigns towards enterprise, right? Multi-threading through an organization, that it's not just the, in this case, plant manager making a buying decision. It's going to be, the COO making a buying decision at a small enterprise level company in manufacturing space, right? So to get to that person, you need marketing to drive awareness towards that person, right? While you're also doing the outreach, and maybe you have a great relationship with the plant manager, but you realize, I need a multi-thread and trying to figure out how I get to the COO because he pulls the purse strings, so to speak. Yeah. So marketing has to be a part of that. And I think also in communication and strategy, EMEA is a really tough market, right? Because we had Benelux, we had UKI, we had DACH, and then we also had Nordics, right? Yeah. So those are very different areas to market towards. Certain things work in the Nordics, which would be a terrible play in DACH, right? So we also have to consider that, right? That down to that level of granularity that the DACH team needs to sit with the marketing team at Performative, at Factbird, wherever, and actually go, no, like, I'm from here. I know what will work in general. Now let's work together to build a plan. Yep. Because it's not you can't stamp the same plan in each of these regions. Whereas in the U.S., right, like in general, of course, it's a very divided place, but you can generally have an idea on how you're going to market to the U.S. market in B2B SaaS. Yeah. So I think that actually creates some unique challenges here in Europe, and that is also like those people who are selling in those regions have to also really be strong in giving their opinion towards marketing on, here's what I think will work, this is a great plan, here's how we strategize to make it even more granular, more impactful.
Yeah, and where
that doesn't always happen, right? Like maybe they don't feel empowered to do that, or they're like, it's not my job to do that, or haven't been told, no, go and do that. So as a commercial leader, also that's my job to make sure that they know that they can go there and ask for that. Yeah. So
we have a rule here at Sparkforce, which is we said it again this morning in our weekly sort of all hands on deck meeting. You can never over communicate.
No,
never.
That's a great point.
And I think that really does ring true when we talk about sales and marketing alignment. But before moving on, we gotta get your perspective on what frustrates marketing about sales. What do you think?
I think, so if we're talking about campaigns, like flippancy towards campaigns, right? Like, okay, you're running a campaign, awareness campaign, and I know I need to do like the task of outreach, but I'm working a deal that's like far in the pipeline, so I'm going to like push all of your tasks that you're asking me to do to the side. Yeah. So I think marketing can get annoyed by sales just chasing money, right? They're there and they're meant to achieve quota, right? So it is their job to do it, but there needs to be some balance there, right? Where if it's important to the business, near term, long term, sales needs to do the activity to help out there. And I think, again, salespeople in general can say like, I'm going to put this on the back burner because it's not directly impacting me today or tomorrow. So I think that can really annoy marketing. Not responding fast enough to inbound leads, and again, as a leader, that's on me to make sure that there's an SLA in place, and it's proven by all stats that the quicker you respond to meaningful inbounds, the better chance they are to close. So again, little details like that I know drive marketing up the wall. And so, it's just about, I think, care and detail, where they feel like, putting a lot of care and detail into campaigns are driving inbound leads, and sometimes sales won't meet them at their level. And then, lack of understanding, right? Like, we can talk all day about ABM or any sort of campaign that we're running, but if sales isn't willing to lean in and truly understand, like, holistically what that means, I think that can also drive marketing a bit nuts.
No, I agree. So if we were to sort of go into the practical things that you've done to sort of bridge that gap, you've been a month at
just under a month.
Just under a month. And, first month loads of things I reckon that you've planned to do, maybe you have done.
Yeah.
But if we were to sort of go into the engine room relative to your role, what are the practical implementations?
Yeah, I think sharing strategy, that was the one. Like we had a marketing director, Christian, built this really nice strategy for 2025, and it just hadn't been shared yet with the salespeople, right? So like very practical thing. Let's all get in a room and share that plan with the salespeople. Yeah. They'd all been told about the ABM campaign running in January, end of January. They had shot the videos for it, but like, what does that mean? So there was a lot of like disconnect there. Yeah. This is natural, right? They're at small scale up phase, right? So some of that disconnect happens, but that's very simple to just go, hey, Christian, come and share your 2025 marketing strategy with the team so that everybody knows exactly. And he had like dates on it, right? Like deliverables by January 31st, March 1st, etc. Yeah. And so just centering everybody around that plan and having them share back like their yearly account plans, right? Here's how we're going to work together. It's super simple, practical way just to get them together. Too many, I think, meetings outside of one another as well. So we had a weekly pipeline review, which is great. We want to dive into the pipeline. Where is the deal at? How are we going to progress it to the next stage? Marketing wasn't always a part of that meeting, so having them join, right? Okay, how can I help you move it to the next stage? And then I've already implemented 2 bi-monthly commercial meetings, and that also involves implementation, onboarding, because we're starting to get more and more customers, so it's going to make the implementation bend a bit, right? The onboarding, it's like a oh shit moment. Like we're starting to get a lot of really, really good customers, and now we need to make sure the onboarding experience is great. Yeah. And so that was for the whole organization, and I would consider implementation and onboarding a part of the commercial. Yeah, the commercial structure in general. Yeah. But getting everybody together in a room and saying like, here's how we're going to help one another to make sure that it is a great customer experience, because at this stage every startup is fragile until they hit a certain, ARR. And so we have to keep our customers happy. Yeah. Simple things like that. And again, it is around communication and getting everybody together in the same room and making sure we're aligned on not only our 2025 goals, what's our ARR goal for the year. Implementation and onboarding should know that. Too many times they sit outside of that. And same with marketing, right? Like, they're going to drive a bunch of campaigns and all that, but like, what's our end goal? And how are you going to impact that directly? So that's been, I think, in the first few weeks. Plans are great. Again, like, how are we all going to execute together to get there? Yeah.
What do you then have in the pipeline? So you're setting yourself up for success. Is there anything where it's like Q1, Q2 from your perspective as a commercial director?
Yeah, you mean as far as
like sales, marketing, alignment in order to hit the goals? Yeah. Obviously, you've went into great detail, but maybe there's things that you have on the horizon where you're like, based on your experiences and your learning so far, where you're like, yes, this is Nirvana.
Yeah, actually, what's funny is around, we did this, and this is like part of our experience, right, is the power of a new website with strong branding. Yeah. So that is in motion for Performative, right? And that's super exciting for me to see, because I think Performative has an amazing product and is really like tight on who they focus on. Like, we have a very narrow focus in a good way on who we know we can impact with our solution. But I think if you go to the website right now, and I've been open about this, I think we don't have a strong brand identity, and it's a little hard to figure out exactly how we can help wealth management firms or private banks, big banks, If all of those different personas come on and start to look at the website right now, it feels like, they'll be searching and searching and searching. So that's a March, April deliverable for a new website. And a stronger brand presence. So I think that's super exciting from a marketing perspective, and also in an ideal world that starts to drive in more inbound leads, right? Because a more compelling site, really understand like, okay, here's how Performative can help me, and so more likely to click through and submit for a demo. Absolutely. So that's one big thing. And then just also becoming a performance-based sales organization. This happened at FactBird as well. And again, that you always want to move quicker on this. You really want to drive home that like, yeah, we're here to achieve our goal as a sales organization, and you have your personal goal that's going to drive us towards our overall goal, and that comes with a lot of pressure. A lot of pressure, as you know. So I think also making that turn for performative to a true performance-based sales organization with some patience, of course, right? Like, it is a big change to go from like a startup just developing the product and selling it where we can to like, no, we need to sell, I'm just making this up, but we need to sell 4 logos per month to hit our goal. And it's on us to make that happen. So putting the right amount of pressure towards performance-based sales organization, and I should say commercial organization, because that involves marketing as well.
That sort of leads us into this avenue where, in order to reach this commercial department, and you're absolutely right, that is what we should call it, because otherwise, again, we're talking silos. I was just thinking, based on what you said, at least in my opinion, I think the reason why we see so much sales and marketing misalignment is simply due to the fact that they're not a commercial entity together, and they are not measured on the same result across the two camps. So what are the key numbers that both teams, let's call them the one team, should actually focus on to drive real business impact?
That's a really good question, because I think there's some early on in startup scale-ups, some of those silos will continue to exist no matter what. I think when I came into Factboard, it was pretty clear that like our sales cycle was way too long, and that our average contract value was way too low. So those were two things that I was zeroed in on right away. And I think actually marketing in a sense helped with that, because you helped create like a whole, how do we onboard more quickly? We had an onboarding flow. What's something that we can like automate to send out to customers? Well, we're also holding the customer accountable to, we have a 30-day trial. On the 31st day, we're going to ask for your business if we built enough value in that time. And you could argue, is too short a time for a demo to happen and then also a trial to happen? Fair enough. But what ended up happening was it went from 8 months to like 3.5 months and stayed at that average for almost 3 years. So I think, but that was very, very sales focused, right? And so that is a bit of a silo. So I think marketing helped in that. And so those were like two goals that were super important to sales because they impacted the revenue number, and maybe separated itself from marketing a bit there. Where I think it evolved was, just Amelia and I working together on, okay, we have our goal, whatever it is. Like we need to hit 5 million ARR by the end of the year. Okay, like how do we get there? Yes, some of the things will be different on our focus, and markets will get different impact, different spend according to that. But in general, just the fact getting the teams together to just say like, here's our goal. Yes, we might deviate a little bit on how we get there, but just know what the other side is doing. So it's going to be really hard to ever get both sides of the commercial organization to be in perfect alignment. There's going to be some competing objectives there. But again, over communication, just knowing what the other team is doing, so that you feel more connected, is super important. But there's no silver bullet. There's no quick solve for this, and it takes an immense amount of patience, not only from both teams, leadership, anybody that's a part of the team, but also a lot of these startups are VC backed. They might come with their own ideas of how to do it, like this, unicorn startup just did this, just replicate that. And it's like, well, that doesn't always reflect the reality on the ground. We're talking about manufacturing intelligence solution, very niche market, right? So B2B SaaS and fintech, it's not going to be the same rhythm or same things that work there that would work in this space. So.
I'm curious though if we should try and simplify it, because so often sales and marketing, it becomes overly complex when it really doesn't need to be. So I'll give you my perspective on it first. And I'm curious to see sort of your opinion. So in my opinion, let's start with marketing. Typically, I think Hockey Stack, they do a bunch of like reports on how long it takes to, and Dream Data has it too, I think, how many impressions it generally takes for a person at a company or more to book the first meeting,
Yes.
how long it takes from that stage to this stage, etc., etc. And I think typically, it might have been Hockey Stack that said it, that whatever your sales cycle is, if that's 6 months, there might be 8 to 12 months of ad impressions prior to that, potentially sales outreach too,
Yes.
right? So knowing that, okay, we got to be realistic about our sales cycle, and whatever comes before that, right, is really marketing that needs to be here. So
Absolutely.
in essence, what we can do in marketing is that we can put the company on the map. We can try and influence, and I think the key here is try and influence the right people,
Right.
so the buying committee, at these companies, give them a positive view of the company,
Right.
and shortlist their company. It's all we can do, right? So
Yeah.
when we talk about marketing driving inbound leads, and I think it's important to say that when we say leads in this case, it's not lead gen forms.
No.
It's actual inbounds due to the fact that you've educated them so much, right?
Right.
And then in the actual sales cycle, we may be able to showcase sort of evidence that backs up that this company is in fact the right choice to have shortlisted.
Yes.
But I don't really see marketing as having any other job than educating, right?
Yeah.
And sales then, and I can only talk for the inbound, to ideally we make sales become sort of an order taker, because the prospect
That
is
would be ideal.
right. So
Yeah.
the prospect is so educated that sales then just needs to say, there's already trust here. I can see that you have XYZ pain points. Solution can solve it
Yeah.
these ways. Is that something that interests you or not? It should never be about, selling something to somebody who isn't actually sure that this is the right product offer. And I think that's when sales become very frustrated.
Right.
This takes time to build, but I think that is the gross oversimplification of what in essence should happen.
I agree with you, actually. And I think that over my last 2.5 years at Factbird, that's where I got more of an education as a commercial leader,
Yeah.
right? Is using something like Dream Data to truly understand like the buying journey,
Yeah.
right? So, and I think that's also a thing where maybe it shouldn't always be on marketing to educate on that level. Should be
Yeah.
sales also coming and saying like, I think the example at Factbird, actually the biggest customer that they have 3 years ago, I think was looking at the site, clicking around, etc. Had one interaction, kept it warm, started to look at more and more of the content that was created, and then I think it was in February of 23, started becoming a paying customer. But there was, if you look at the touch points that happened before that,
Yeah.
there were so many
Yeah.
that happened, and now it's grown into this like massive success story
Yeah.
for Factbird, and it's a great relationship. But I actually don't think that story has necessarily been told to the sales team either. I'm aware of it because I just know the background to it. But that was eye-opening for me, right? Because that is it's a game-changing customer for Factbird, and that only happened because, again, they were like ready at that time to buy, and they knew about Factbird, and they knew the capabilities of it, and they thought, how would this actually impact our factory floor, right? And so it was an easy enough sell at that point. Obviously, growing it to the level that they've grown it has taken a lot of sales skill.
Absolutely.
And, the actual product has brought a ton of value to that organization, which is fantastic. But, a lot went into it before.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's actually an oversimplification in what marketing is meant to do and drive for sales, but I think that's a miss across all B2B SaaS companies, is that is not explained very often.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because sales isn't receptive to it, or there's not like leadership that, drives home that point. And so I think that's just a generally good thing to say out to the B2B SaaS market is, marketing educate sales and sales educate marketing.
Yeah.
Have open conversations about it and really talk about the journey as opposed to, quick wins happening all the time. It's just not realistic.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said there, because obviously all companies want to be unicorn companies, right?
Yeah, of course.
Want to achieve 100% growth year over year. And if we don't think about, and I think oftentimes, before I say what I wanted to say, is that we forget how we would buy ourselves.
Yeah.
So we expect prospects to, why don't they just sign up? I mean,
Yes.
come on. But then you look at the website, you look at potentially the marketing content, you look at how sales approach a demo, and you're like, oh my God, if they try to do that to me,
Yes.
I would never.
Never buy.
And I've always asked both sales and marketing people this: would you buy based on the material you're currently putting out there, like in your go-to-market strategy?
Yeah.
And most people are like, probably not. When people write you cold calling or whatever, how do you respond? Just,
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with that, because a lot of research nowadays shows that people want to buy on their own accord, and they'll talk to sales when they're ready.
Yes.
And then talking about sales and marketing alignment with the leadership potentially as well, what we then have there is sort of a conundrum, because we need to sell fast because we need to grow.
Yeah.
And if we're presented with data like you and I have been that says you gotta have patience
Yes.
because of the average deal cycle, etc., and you could take steps like you did to shorten that, and then maybe you could actually speed up your ramping efforts.
Right.
But respecting that this is just how it actually works, and we can't just force feed sales with leads
Yes.
that are not ready to buy, because then we end up back at square one, which is frustrations in terms of alignment.
Yes. Agreed.
So what is the advice? Like what is the advice from your perspective on, for companies out there generally struggling with this, because there's many. Just in your personal opinion, like, what is it besides communication?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, because I think, again, communication is the foundation of it. But I also think hiring leaders in certain positions that have a holistic view of what a commercial function is meant to be nowadays.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, if you're going to hire a head of sales or a head of marketing, I would quiz them hard on, like, okay, what is your role meant to be? How do you look at your role? And then grill them hard on, like, how do you see yourself functioning and collaborating with sales?
Yeah.
So I think it starts from there.
Yeah.
I think you have to be really diligent in how you hire out leadership in these certain positions.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. And then I also think this is probably like a plea also to top leadership and the VCs of the world, is that so many startups are just trying to figure it out on the fly and sell and grow at 70% year over year until they hit some sort of status. Either they're bought by private equity or go public, whatever it is. There's so much failing involved and patience needed.
Yeah.
So I think that would be my general advice also to top leadership, is to, like, allow some space for the right people to make wrong decisions and eventually get to a place where they have figured it out.
Yeah.
And of course, you have to be held accountable to the numbers. That's never going to go away. But yeah, I do think it starts with hiring in leadership, and are those people willing to, like, sort of, like, get into the muck with their team as well? So stand shoulder to shoulder and not just be like, report warriors, right? Just looking at HubSpot and, pointing and telling people what to do based off of that. You need a bunch of doers, even at, like, top leadership levels.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be my advice. And then, don't over-engineer everything, like you were saying, right? It doesn't have to be complicated, complex. Don't pick 30 objectives or goals for the year that you want to hit. Pick 3 to 5 and be laser focused on those.
Yeah.
And then I think most of the time success is going to follow. So.
And we hope that is what happens for you
Yes,
at Performative.
thank you.
Most likely it will, because you got your stuff straight.
Yeah. I hope so. Knock on wood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But let's let those be the final words. I
Cool.
think that's a great message. And thank you for participating.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.